to allow students to generate ideas or to refine content using LLMs, then I have a strategy for teaching students to interrogate any content, generated content, using careful consideration before incorporating it. Whoops. Oh, what's happening? There we go. So, for those of you who are still on the fence, however, consider this quote by Ethan Mollick, who writes widely on the topic of AI in the classroom. He says, the only bad way to react to AI is to pretend it doesn't change anything. And I know I had a semester of I think ChatGPT came out in November of 2022. That whole spring semester, I was like, I don't know what this thing is. I don't know how to address it. I hear that we need to think about it, but I don't quite know what it even is. So I spent the summer making sure that I brought myself up to speed on it. So my stance as a writing teacher, I am a composition and rhetoric and technical professional writing teacher. And as I said, I teach a honors 210 technical professional writing this semester. So my stance on the use of this technology evolved from the initial reaction to police it out of the classroom into understanding that it must be taught as a part of digital information literacy. So I've come to see its value to address that blank screen syndrome we all kind of suffer from, and that can be so crippling. So also understanding that when writers are tempted to step away from seemingly blocked ideas, LLMs can elicit new connections that unstick that stuck feeling, particularly when using them with a carefully constructed prompt, which is always important. So the issue that we have with the LLMs in the classroom is that anything generated must always be interrogated. It's never taken as ready for use, even though it looks polished, it looks primed and ready to go. And students who are in survival mode and who have themselves overbooked, do not have success strategies, and who are just overwhelmed, that you can punch a button with even a very carelessly worded prompt and get a decent essay. For some of them, that tests their integrity in ways that is just not, I feel like it's almost not fair when someone is so overwhelmed. So we have to teach them to resist that copy and go impulse, and we have to teach them to sufficiently vet that content. And then also, one of the dangers is the over reliance of it, to teach them when it's okay to turn to the LLMs, or when it can best help you with your ideas, or when you don't have any ideas and you need it to generate the ideas. So the bottom line was that students require proper guidance in ethical and best practice use of these tools. Policing them out of our classrooms, I have come to believe is not going to best present our students into the workforce where they're going to be expected to use it. And we are trying to instill ethics in, we want ethical leaders. Our students produce leaders. Our university produces leaders. And we want ethical leaders who know how to use their tools ethically. Now, as Mahabali says, she says, there is only the way that works within your perimeters of your situation. So I'm not here to tell you how to use it in your classroom or whether you even should use it. I'm just representing my stance based on going from not even knowing what it was fully to actually realizing that I've got to inform myself on this and I must develop a strategy for using it. So, but the only right way to do it is the way that works best for you within your field and within your teaching pedagogy. So the roadmap for how I did that, this was my first go at it this semester, and I think it's working pretty well. Of course, I'd love to revisit after the semester is over and see if I wanted to tweak any of my strategies. But the first thing I did was build a welcoming environment for technology as a tool, not a crutch, in the syllabus. So I greeted my students with a very clear stance on generative AI use in the classroom. And I polled them on the first day to see how many of you are using this. And ironically, I expected everybody to be way ahead of what I knew, but I found out that the majority of my class And I'm attributing this to them being honor students who really care about their GPA and who are on track for their pre-med, their pre-law. They are leaders in their student communities. They didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. They were scared of, frightened of getting in trouble. And so that's when it really bolstered to me that I need to show them how to use this and that it can be used ethically. So I also made sure that I teach AI literacy in conjunction with the course content. I don't let it take over my content, but I have a unit and I kind of spread it throughout our content that shows them awareness, like what is this? Awareness that you're already using AI in a lot of different places in your life that you may not even be aware of. I teach them capability of being capable to use it, like what is a prompt, how to put a prompt in there, how to look at this information and know, did it actually answer your question? Did it not? And then also to look at it as a knowledge, like an epistemological tool, like it's generating knowledge. This computer is generating knowledge that is challenges your known versus your new, meaning you know some things about this topic, but it's generating new knowledge for you. So you've got to use your critical thinking to be able to see, is this actually useful? Is it even true? Is it a hallucination? Is it just trying to please me by answering the prompt that I plugged into it? And we all know garbage in, garbage out. If you give it a crappy prompt, you're going to get a crappy response. But students have to engage in critical thinking to understand that. Now, I'm calling this ancient history rhetoric to the rescue, because rhetoricians know that we have been interrogating speech patterns, speech communication, and it's evolved into writing communication, writing patterns, rhetorical choices. We've already been doing this. So this feels like another place that rhetoric just fits right in. We know we have strategies for this. And what I don't think that people realize is that you can use some of these ancient strategies fit really beautifully in this modern technology. So stasis theory as a rhetorical tool dates back 2,000 years to ancient Greek and Roman courtrooms, where it was kind of a theoretical principles that guided speakers stuck at an impasse a way forward. So you'd have two speakers, elocuting about something, and they both sounded good. They both sounded like they knew what they were talking about. Oh my gosh, what do I do? We're stuck at an impasse. But stasis theory helps get to locate the crux of the issue so that you can move forward. Now, stasis theory as a strategy operates on what it calls four stases, which really just breaks down into fact versus conjecture, definition, quality, and policy. And it's typically demonstrated in four questions, meaning what are the facts of the situation? So is what's being told to me truth, or is it conjecture? Is someone making assumptions? You look for those assumptions built within what's positioned as truth, and you interrogate it that way. Another way is through, how is the issue properly defined? Are all the contours of the definition present? Is there anything being left out? If certain information being privileged over other information? And then what are the qualities or values that are represented? Is this presented? What's the tone here? The tone and the quality of the message also have a stake in the truth of it, or how you should move forward, such as biases, built-in biases, things along that line. And then next you ask, what is the next action? How do I go forward after doing this interrogation? And so what I saw, knowing stasis theory, is that just a modified version of that with slight modification, this sequence of questions works quite well when applied to LLM generated content. So for example, when presented with a chatbot generated answer to a question, instructors or students should immediately find themselves in stasis. That is, unsure whether the information is correct, misleading, biased, or potentially offensive. Because as we know, that our human all it's doing is scraping and crawling across our internet information, and it's bringing forth all of the biases that are embedded in that. So interrogating the content with variations of the stasis questions will then exhibit critical thinking and demonstrate rhetorical agency by anyone using it. So consider analyzing LLM generated information using these adapted steps from stasis theory. And seriously, I mean, they adapt so well. I just kind of brought them from the classic into modified stasis, and it's established the content's factual integrity, consider whether the content has appropriate depth, scope, clarity, etc., towards defining the matter, evaluate the content quality, such as appropriate tone, attitude, word choice, and then say to myself, does this let me go forward? Do I need to go check some facts? Do I need to adjust the tone of this information? Do I need to ask a better prompt? So just to give you a quick example, students often, even though I've given them prompt instruction, they don't always, they're in a hurry. So I've tried to generate in this slide just a very loosely worded prompt. And it's like, how do people commonly refer to human-induced climate change? And so what I get back is a series of 5 different categories. And anywhere from people call it climate change, people call it anthropogenic climate change, people call it crisis, global climate emergency, all of these things. And so if that were a generated answer, I want to show the students how they can use stasis theory. Now, of course, I would show them, ask them to do the 4 demonstrated questions that I just showed you in the moderated, but I also developed this little rubric for them, or this little table for them, that takes that, you can see in the gray, the fact, definition, quality, and actions. And then I have applied the who, what, when, where, and why questions. So for example, if they were on the first set of it, first question asking about the fact, they could say, who created these facts? Where, and in ChatGPT, they're not going to be able to tell you the sources. Now, in something like Bing, it will be able to look at the sources. And if the sources are from people's blog posts or from Wikipedia, or things along that line, that immediately lets you know the quality of the facts that have been generated. And then you might jump to the why part of why include these facts. Because as we know, when you include facts, you are also ignoring other facts. And so I'm starting to show them how to look at this through different levels, different strategies, different stratifications of those 4 questions. So it's 4 basic questions, but you can take it as deep as you want to. And I do this as an exercise. And then after this, I expect them to kind of inculcate this and to have this embedded in their approach to this information. And then I incorporate an audit trail where they show me how they used. I encourage them to use it, allow them to use it, but I want to see the audit trail. So in many ways, this is not a quick fix. It is extra work, but it is a way to show critical thinking. And that's what excites me as a professor of writing. Now, so the takeaways that I want you to leave with is that modified stasis theory is a great strategy, and that it comes from ancient Rome and Greece, but it's still modern. It's still relevant today. And I'm showing this picture here that I generated this picture using PixArt, and I asked it to show a writing student assisted by AI. And if you played around with any of these, it can, with the right prompts, it can create some beautiful images. But with a sloppy prompt, you get a sloppy image, and you get the student here with the robotic looking hand, and then I guess it's the teacher's hand or the AI's hand with some type of pencil, jutting from its appendage. So it's just a reminder to me that these computers haven't quite figured humans out yet, and it's still learning us as we are learning it. So this is a prime moment for us to be involved in the evolution of this, and to evolve ourselves as users of it, and to also teach our students. So stasis theory as a strategy, the takeaways are that we can't just hope students use the technology ethically. We have to give them strategies. And generated content, what they must realize is that generated content is only a starting point. And you have to instill a cautious approach backed by a strategy. If you just tell them, be careful using it, but you don't give them a strategy, then they don't have a tool for using it. And I attended over the summer several conferences, and one of them was a student-led conference, and the students, who obviously knew this technology way better than I did, were saying, we want our professors to show us how to use it. So I would envision future topics that I would love to speak on is how to protect that student's voice and guard against flattening that original thinking that can come from using LLMs, because they are a tool, but they still come with cautions. And also to avoid making the goal of composition courses merely to edit LLM generated content into acceptable use. So finally, I want to remind us that we've been here before. And just as when Plato voiced Socrates' alarm at that new technology called writing and the irrevocable changes it would bring, Socrates says, if men learn writing, it will implant forgetfulness in their souls. They will cease to exercise memory because they rely on that which is written, calling things to remembrance no longer from within themselves, but by means of external marks. And you know what? He wasn't wrong. How many of us know a telephone number? We don't. We let our phones do the memory work for us. But it's just important to remember, I use this quote as a reminder that humans continually innovate. So there will always be a need for teaching and strategies to accommodate innovation. We as teachers are not being de-skilled. We are being invited to upskill. Thank you.